Hey, this is Ron with my review of the Pedego Element. I'm going to take us down a little grassy slope, just a short distance to show you what it can do on grass, and then I'll give you the review. Hang on. So I never would do that with a bicycle. I'm not a huge fan of bicycles, but I've been riding them my whole life. I always feel that bicycles on off-road lead to falls and injuries, and I've had plenty of friends who'll testify to that. And on a motorcycle, 57 years of riding motorcycles, this wouldn't have bothered me. But with this fat tires on this Pedego, and there's a lot of the other bikes that have the fat tires, it really makes it just so easy. I don't even think about it. I've done this grassy area many times, and I always expect somebody to tell me, stop doing that, you shouldn't be here. The great thing about e-bikes is you can kind of go anywhere and people just leave you alone. But I've had the bike long enough. I've got 680 miles on it, which isn't a lot, but I'm 75, so hey, that's 680 miles more than a lot of my friends. Yeah, so these fat tires are just really amazing, and they give you a little bit of a cushioning ride. It doesn't have any suspension, and I think you got to spend a lot of money to get suspension. This bike is $16.95. Well, to get good suspension especially. You could put a seat post that has a shock absorber type thing on it that kind of takes some of the impact of the saddle out. But I've learned a lot of stuff about this bike. I did a little review when I first got it, and boy, have I I've learned my lesson in many ways. This has mechanical brakes, which some people think is kind of the cheap way out. They worked fine at first, but I made the mistake of adjusting them, and I didn't do it correctly. I've had plenty of bicycles, and they all had coaster brakes or the rim pinch brakes. So this was kind of something new for me. But you would think with 57 years of motorcycle riding and 550,000 miles, I would be able to do a decent job. But I screwed it up. And also at about 600 miles, the pads were pretty well worn. So when I took it to the shop, which is, by the way, one of the wonderful things about Pedego, is having a retail shop available. They took the pads out and they showed them to me, and they were pretty close. I could have gotten a little more. By the way, there's lots of big hills around here, which is one of the big reasons I got an e-bike versus riding my bicycle. At my age, I just wasn't getting very far on a bicycle. This kind of forces me to get exercise. So I haven't done a lot of things to the bike. I put my old bicycle seat, which the stock seat was okay. This is a little more comfortable. It's pretty beat up. I put the water bottle on just because I had it. I'm not sure I would put it on if I didn't have one. My wife got me the phone mount. She likes me to make sure I have the phone with me, and actually it works really good. The lights are battery powered. They're not rechargeable, and I've had them on now for almost 600 miles, and of course in the flashing mode I don't think they use much power, so I'm not sure how long they'll last, but they're sure lasting a long time. I did put a mirror on. I've had plenty of mirrors on helmets, and I sure have mixed feelings about them. They're fine. You get used to them. But even with this mirror or the helmet mirror, I after riding motorcycles all these years, I've learned my lesson. I always look over my shoulder before I do anything, because a mirror just doesn't cover all the situations. So a lot of people don't like the throttle. This has a throttle like a motorcycle. You twist it, a twist grip throttle. Some of them have a thumb throttle. I can kind of understand that, because if you give it a little, just a little touch, it wants to go, and it's real easy to have it just jolt out from under you. But I'm so used to it that I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but I've kind of stopped using the modes that help you pedal, and I just use the throttle when I need it. So if I'm going downhill, steep downhill or slight downhill, I pedal. If it's flat, I start running out of steam and give it a little throttle. If it's uphill, I give it enough throttle to get up the hill. And I think I think once I got used to it, I actually think it's safer because, well, I don't know. It's like I said, I've been riding motorcycles for all these years, but when I come to a tricky situation, a sharp U-turn, a lot of obstacles around me, like fences and trees, when you're pedaling, it's easy to kind of start to pedal and suddenly have it speed up more than you want to. Where with the throttle, once you get used to it, you always can feed in whatever throttle you need, or none at all. So the battery on this is supposedly they're Samsung cells. So I'm very concerned about batteries because that's a huge cost if you have a problem. The range, if you can see this, is indicated by the number of bars on the battery. And when I first got it, I was assuming that when I got 8 miles out of the first bar and 8 miles out of the second and 8 out of the third, that I still had a lot of juice left. But I've almost run out twice, and with the steep hills, it's really a problem. When you get down to 2 bars, it seems like it goes through the 2 bars very quickly, and then once it gets down to 1 bar, it very quickly goes into what I would call a limp home mode, where it's barely powering on a flat level 7-8 miles an hour and really not much help on the hills, which I really need. So what I've been doing is I've been resetting the odometer, which is certainly easy to do every time I ride, and I just go by the odometer rather than the bars. I do look at the bars. The Pedego dealer said that I needed to condition and train the computer to know what's full and what's empty by charging it fully and then running it to as close to empty as possible, and that it would learn, supposedly. I'm not sure I buy that, but I've done it twice, and it still seems like it gets a pretty minimal mileage once you get down to the last bar. So my theory is, and a lot depends on the ride too. There's certainly the downhills you're not using the power, but the power going up these steep hills burns up a lot of energy. You notice the mode is 6. That's throttle only. It has 5 modes that give you pedal assist, and I gotta say, for 1700, I rode a lot of different bikes, and I like the quality. I like the idea of having a bricks and mortar store that I can bring it to. The salespeople, the mechanics, everybody's in there has been nice. That certainly is a consideration. As for what I would do in the future, I'm enjoying this enough that I think I might get a bike that has more hill climbing ability. And I've had several shop people tell me that the top speed is not as relevant as torque. If you're looking for a bike to climb hills, you need to look at torque settings. Although I have to say, I tested a few bikes that supposedly were fast, torquey bikes that couldn't make it up even relatively short but very steep hills. So it's a difficult thing to come to terms with, because the top speed and the listed power and the listed torque is kind of debatable, and there's certainly nobody monitoring their claims. So I think you really got to ride the bike and make sure it'll get up a hill. This one on a really steep hill will slow down to about 7-8 miles an hour, but I guess that's acceptable. I would like to have a bike that had a little more torque and maybe a little more range. I still haven't quite figured out exactly the range. I would certainly feel comfortable with 25 miles. When it starts to get up to 30, I would start to get a little worried about it. And by the way, I do mostly motorcycle reviews, and I'm not trying to convince motorcyclists, but I gotta say, I wouldn't trade this for a motorcycle. I mean, I want to keep riding motorcycles as long as I can, but it forces me to get out, and I have to say, it kind of reminds me of when I first started riding motorcycles, and they were back in the early 60s, and they were small and light and agile, and back then nobody had helmets, and you've got this freedom to just jump on it without whatever you're wearing and just go. I am wearing a little bicycle helmet, but compared to what I wear on a motorcycle, it's pretty minimal. And I'm not sure you need to go real fast. 30 miles an hour going downhill on this thing feels like 90 on the motorcycle. And you don't have to pay registration and insurance and inspections, and it's just, really easy to own. And I just highly recommend it at any age. It's shocking how many people my age are riding these things who were giving up their bicycles or had given them up. So anyway, this is Ron signing off.